The restaurant is supposed to cease operations immediately.
Now, Jack in the Box declined to provide additional details outside of its news release.
Breaking news out of California. Jack in the Box, born in this state, built in this state, is now shutting down locations as part of a national closure sweep. Workers show up expecting a shift. Customers pull into drive-thrus expecting a provisionary routine, and instead they find the lights off. This is not a rumour. Jack in the Box itself says it plans to close 150 to 200 underperforming restaurants under its Jack on Track turnaround plan. And California, where the brand is densest, is right in the blast zone. So here's the question nobody wants to answer on camera. When a California icon starts retreating from California, what exactly is Sacramento supposed to say? Source Jack in the Box isn't some fringe chain. It's a legacy name, headquartered in San Diego, operating and franchising roughly 2,200 restaurants across more than 20 states. It's the kind of brand that usually signals stability, standardized menus, predictable demand, and a footprint built over decades. Source: but in April 2025, the company made its move official. Jack on Track, translation, cost-cutting, balance sheet triage, and closures. The company said it expects a block closure program that could shut roughly 150 to 200 underperforming restaurants, with about 80 to 120 closures planned between then and December 31, 2025. A majority of the targeted stores, the company noted, have been in the system for over 3 decades. That detail matters, because it means this is not just new stores that didn't work. These are long-standing locations that survived recessions, food fads, and the delivery revolution, but are now being labelled unsustainable. Source now overlay that with California's unique fast food policy experiment. On April 1, 2024, California's fast food minimum wage jumped to $20 an hour for covered workers. Those employed at limited service restaurants that are part of chains with at least 60 establishments nationwide and primarily engaged in selling food and beverages for immediate consumption. That includes the giants, and it includes Jack in the Box. Source in California didn't just raise wages. The state built a mechanism designed to keep pushing. AB 1228 created the Fast Food Council, tasked with developing minimum employment standards and empowered to raise the fast food minimum wage annually, capped at the lesser of 3.5% or the annual CPI increase for urban wage earners and clerical workers. That's the structure. A permanent pressure system, predictable to lawmakers, terrifying to operators trying to forecast costs years out. Source: by early 2025, Reuters reported the Fast Food Council had approved a motion to consider a cost of living adjustment, potentially adding up to 70 cents, taking the wage to $20.70. While business owners argued not enough time had passed to measure the impact of the $20 floor, and workers countered that rent and medicine costs keep climbing anyway. This is the political trap. If wages rise, operators warn of closures. If wages don't rise, workers say the law has failed its purpose. Source now: the tension hits street level, because a wage law doesn't shut a store by itself. Closures happen when multiple lines converge: labour, food, rent, and demand. And Jack in the Box's own filings show demand is a problem. In its fiscal year 2025 earnings release, the company reported same-store sales down 4.2% for the full year and down 7.4% in the fourth quarter, driven by fewer transactions and an unfavourable menu mix, only partially offset by menu price increases. That's the part viewers feel: fewer customers, higher prices, and a shrinking margin for error. Source: then comes the headline number that turns industry stress into corporate emergency. Jack in the Box reported a net loss of about $80.7 million for fiscal year 2025. Not a slowdown, not a rough quarter, a loss. And the company's own narrative ties the turnaround plan to debt paydown, real estate sales, and a simplified asset-light model. That is corporate code for we need cash, we need flexibility, and we can't carry weak stores anymore. Source: this is where California becomes the center of controversy, whether Sacramento likes it or not. Because AB 1288 was pitched as a national leading worker protection move, Newsom's office framed it as lifting pay for a workforce of more than 500,000 fast food workers and giving them a stronger voice and seat at the table. Source: but critics hear something else. A state government setting a high-cost floor for a low-margin industry right as customer demand weakens. Franchise owners aren't sitting on Silicon Valley margins. They're selling burgers and late-night tacos where a small swing in costs or a small dip in traffic can flip profit into loss. And when that happens, closures don't look like strategy. They look like abandonment. The company's earnings release shows a concrete snapshot of contraction. In Q4 alone, Jack in the Box closed 47 restaurants, with 38 of those closures tied to the Jack on Track block closure program. For the full fiscal year 2025, it opened 31 and closed 86. When a brand is closing nearly 3 stores for every one it opens, it stops being a refresh. It becomes a retreat. Source: and the public-facing reports keep piling up. Fox Business reported that Jack in the Box had shuttered 72 locations so far as part of the plan, with more expected, citing pressures like rising beef prices and heavy debt compared to earnings. Even if you dispute the politics, the pattern is visible. Closures aren't isolated. They're clustered, cumulative, and accelerating. Source now: picture the governor's office in the middle of this. California's leadership doesn't need to panic publicly for the pressure to be real, because politically, this story writes itself in attack ads. California raised fast food wages, and then California fast food jobs disappeared. On the other side, labor advocates can fire back just as hard. Companies are using closures to pressure lawmakers, while workers still can't afford rent. Here's the uncomfortable part. Both sides can point to facts, and both sides can still be misleading by omission. Yes, wage floors raise labor costs. Yes, workers in one of the most expensive states in America argue they still can't survive. Yes, corporate losses and falling sales are real. The conflict isn't manufactured, it's structural, and it fits a broader narrative California can't escape. The ongoing argument that businesses are leaving, downsizing, or simply refusing to expand in the state. The Public Policy Institute of California found that from 2011 to 2021, the number of company headquarters that left California on net was 789, about 1.9% of the state's headquarters. Small in percentage terms, but still tens of thousands of headquarters jobs tied to relocations, and an outflow that's trended upward in annual counts over the period studied. It's not everyone fleeing. It's something more complex, a slow drip that becomes a political flood every time a recognizable name makes a move. Source now. The critical moment, Jack in the Box doesn't have to say California is the problem for California to be implicated. In its own Jack on Track guidance, the company explicitly referenced the impact of a full year of AB 2028 wage increases among the pressures baked into its expectations. That is a direct connection. Quiet, corporate, but real. Source. So when locations shut down across California, people naturally ask, is this a warning shot at Sacramento? Or is it simply a brand bleeding customers and cutting losses where it can? Because if it's the second one, then the crisis is bigger than any wage law. It means the fast food model itself, late night traffic, cheap meals, high volume, may be cracking under inflation, debt, and consumer fatigue. And then comes the response phase, where the politics get dangerous. The governor can't easily celebrate $20 wages and ignore closures. But he also can't attack a company restructuring during losses without looking anti-business. Meanwhile, the Fast Food Council sits as the symbol of California's experiment, empowered to adjust wages, hearing public comments, and becoming the arena where business owners and workers argue over the same reality with different survival math. Source: this is where debate turns into a referendum. If wages rise again, will more locations close? If wages freeze, will workers fall behind anyway? And if corporate chains keep shrinking, what happens to the entry-level job ladder California relied on for decades? Because the endgame isn't just fewer drive-thrus. It's whether California can keep selling itself as the blueprint for the future, while iconic brands quietly reduce their footprint in the state that made them famous. Jack in the Box says it's on track. The question is, on track for what? A leaner comeback or a visible retreat from the very market that once guaranteed its dominance? Source: